The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 10,000 seats rose in circles around the central platform, and every single one was filled. Species from across the known galaxy had come to Nexus Prime. They had come because they were afraid. They had come because they were dying. Ambassador Zethra stood at the center of the platform. She was old, even by Aldrani standards. Her silver skin had faded to pale gray over the centuries, and her 4 eyes carried the weight of memories that stretched back further than most civilizations had existed. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched stars die, but she had never seen fear like this. "The Velkari Dominion has taken the Thesson system," she said. Her voice was calm, but everyone in the hall could hear the tremor beneath it. "That makes 17 civilizations. 17 species. Gone." The word hung in the air like poison. A holographic display flickered to life above the platform. It showed a map of the Orion Arm, and nearly a third of it was colored in dark red. The red represented Velkari territory. 10 years ago, that red had been a tiny spot on the edge of known space. Now, it spread like a disease, swallowing everything in its path. "The Thalassian Republic held out for 3 months," Zethra continued. "They had the largest fleet in their sector. 200,000 warships. The Velkari destroyed them in a single engagement. There were no survivors." Murmurs spread through the hall. The Thalassians had been powerful. They had been confident, and now they were gone. Their worlds stripped bare. Their people reduced to nothing but organic matter to feed the Velkari war machine. "We cannot fight them," said a voice from the upper tiers. It belonged to Delegate Morven of the Crystalline Collective. His body was made of living crystal, and it caught the light as he spoke, sending rainbow patterns across the walls. "Our combined fleets number perhaps 3 million vessels. The Velkari have over 20 million, and they grow stronger with every world they consume." "Then what do you suggest?" demanded another voice. This one came from General Throck of the Vanguard Coalition. He was a massive creature, covered in thick armor plates, with 4 arms and a face full of tusks. His people were warriors, and they had been fighting the Velkari longer than anyone else. "Do we simply wait for death? Do we watch as they eat their way across the galaxy? What choice do we have?" Morven replied. His crystal body flickered with stress patterns. "We have tried everything. We have formed alliances. We have built weapons. We have sent our best strategists against them. Nothing works. The Velkari are not like us. They do not think like us. They are a hive mind. Billions of creatures acting as one. They do not hesitate. They do not make mistakes. They simply consume." The hall erupted into argument. Voices rose from every tier, every species shouting over each other. Some called for surrender. Others called for one final, desperate attack. A few simply wept. Zethra raised her hand, and slowly, the noise died down. She was the oldest being in the room, and even in their panic, the other species respected that. "There is one option we have not considered," she said. The hall went silent again. Everyone looked at her, waiting. "We could contact the humans." The reaction was immediate. Some delegates gasped. Others laughed bitterly. A few simply stood up and walked out without a word. But most just stared at Zethra, as if she had lost her mind. "The humans?" General Throck's voice was heavy with disbelief. "The humans are quarantined. They have been quarantined for 200 years. There is a reason for that. I know the reason." Zethra said quietly. Everyone in the hall knew the reason. It was one of the darkest chapters in galactic history, and no one liked to talk about it. 2 centuries ago, humanity had emerged onto the galactic stage. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel. They were curious, energetic, and eager to make friends. The Galactic Council had welcomed them with open arms. And then the Tetheran Empire had made a mistake. The Tethyrans were old and proud. They did not like newcomers, and they especially did not like the humans, who seemed to spread across the stars like weeds. So they decided to teach humanity a lesson. They attacked a human colony world called New Eden, killing 50,000 civilians in a single orbital bombardment. The Tethyrans expected humanity to back down. They expected fear, negotiation, perhaps a small war that would end with humanity accepting its place at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. What they got was something else entirely. 11 days after the attack on New Eden, the Tethyran Empire ceased to exist. Not defeated, not conquered, ceased to exist. The humans did not negotiate. They did not make demands. They simply appeared in Tethyran space, with a fleet that no one had known they possessed, and they began to destroy. World by world, station by station, ship by ship. They did not stop to accept surrender. They did not pause to take prisoners. They did not rest. In 11 days, the Tethyran Empire, a civilization that had existed for 40,000 years, was gone. Their worlds were empty. Their fleets were dust. Their people had vanished, and no one knew where they had gone or what had happened to them. The galaxy looked at humanity with new eyes after that, and what they saw terrified them. The humans had hidden their true capabilities. Their public fleet, the one they showed to the galaxy, was nothing but a mask. Beneath it lay something else, something that could erase a 40,000-year-old empire in less than 2 weeks. The Galactic Council had acted quickly. They had offered humanity a deal. Stay in your own space. Limit your expansion. Keep to yourself, and we will leave you alone. The humans, perhaps tired of war, perhaps simply uninterested in conquest, had agreed. A quarantine zone was established around human space. No one went in. Nothing came out. For 200 years, humanity had been a mystery, a ghost story that parents told their children to make them behave. The humans are monsters, said Delegate Morvan. They committed genocide against the Tethyrans. Did they? Zethra asked. Did anyone actually confirm that? Did anyone find bodies? Did anyone find evidence of mass graves or death camps? Silence. We do not know what happened to the Tethyrans, Zethra continued. We only know that they are gone, and that humans were responsible. But we never asked the humans what they did. We were too afraid to ask. And now you want to invite them here? General Throck shook his massive head. You want to let them loose on the galaxy again? I want to survive, Zethra said simply. I have lived for 12,000 years. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have seen horrors that would drive most beings mad. But I have never seen anything like the Velkhari. They do not want territory. They do not want resources. They want to consume everything, everywhere, forever. If we do not stop them, there will be nothing left. Not just for us, but for everyone. Every species, every world, every star. She paused, letting her words sink in. The humans may be dangerous. They may be unpredictable. They may be exactly as terrifying as we remember. But right now, they are our only hope. The debate lasted for 3 days. Delegates argued until their voices gave out. They brought up old records, old fears, old nightmares. They talked about the Tethyran extinction. They talked about the reports from the quarantine zone, the strange sensor readings, the ships that had tried to sneak into human space and had never returned. But in the end, fear won out over fear. The Velkhari were a certain death. The humans were only a possibility. The vote passed by a narrow margin. A message was composed and sent to the edge of the quarantine zone, where automated stations maintained a fragile communication link with human space. The message was simple. We need your help. The Velkhari Dominion threatens all life in the galaxy. We ask that you honor the bonds of sapient kinship and stand with us against this common enemy. Then they waited. Days passed. Then weeks. The Valkyrie continued their advance, consuming 2 more systems while the council waited for a reply that might never come. Some delegates began to give up hope. Others secretly hoped that the humans would refuse, that they would not have to face one nightmare to escape another. And then, exactly 37 days after the message was sent, a reply came. It was not what anyone expected. The reply was short. It contained no flowery language, no diplomatic niceties, no expressions of sympathy or solidarity. It was just a few lines of text, transmitted in the standard galactic communication format. We accept. Clear all civilian traffic from the Kepler corridor within 14 standard days. Failure to comply will result in casualties that we will not be held responsible for. Do not attempt to observe our transit. Do not attempt to communicate with our vessels. Do not get in our way. That was it. No greeting, no farewell, no explanation. The council read the message 100 times, trying to find hidden meaning, trying to understand what the humans were planning. But there was nothing to understand. The message said exactly what it meant. Clear the corridor. Stay out of the way. We are coming. Ambassador Zethra read the message one final time, and she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She did not know if it was hope or fear. Perhaps it was both. What do we do now? Asked General Throck. We do what they asked, Zethra said. We clear the corridor. We get our people out of the way. And we pray to whatever gods we believe in, that we have not made a terrible mistake. Far across the galaxy, in a system that no galactic map had charted in 2 centuries, something was stirring. The orbital fortress, Aegis Prime, hung in the darkness above Earth's moon. It was massive, larger than most space stations in the galaxy, but it was invisible to all known sensors. It simply did not exist as far as the rest of the universe was concerned. Admiral Helena Vance sat in her command chair, reading the message from the Galactic Council. She was in her 60s, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much to ever be surprised again. She had been in command of Aegis Prime for 15 years, and in all that time, she had never expected this day to come. But here it was. She read the message twice, noting the fear between the lines, the desperation that had driven the galaxy's proudest species to come begging for help from the monsters they had locked away. She allowed herself a small smile. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had been patient for a very long time. Admiral, said her aide, a young officer named Chen. What do you want me to tell them? Vance considered the question. She thought about the Valkyrie, about the reports she had been reading for years, about the civilizations they had consumed and the billions of lives they had ended. She thought about the T-Thyrans, about what her predecessors had done 2 centuries ago and why. She thought about all the things that humanity had learned during their long isolation, all the weapons they had built, all the power they had gathered, and she smiled again. Tell them we accept, she said. And tell them to clear the civilians from the Kepler corridor. All of them. Every single ship. Every single station. Every single living being. I want that corridor empty. Empty. Chen frowned. Admiral, the Kepler corridor is 12 light-years long. There are hundreds of stations, thousands of ships. Then they had better start moving, Vance said. Because in 14 days, we are going to war. And I do not intend to slow down for anything. She stood up from her chair and walked to the viewport. Outside, she could see the darkness of space, dotted with the lights of human stations and ships, an entire civilization, hidden from the galaxy, growing in secret for 200 years. They had used that time well. Send the activation codes to all fleet commands, Vance said. Wake up the reserves, bring the Prometheus out of dock, and get me a direct line to the Joint Chiefs. We have a lot of work to do. Chen saluted and hurried away. Vance remained at the viewport, staring out into the darkness. The Valkyrie had no idea what was coming. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. They thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They thought the Tethyran extinction was the worst thing humans could do. They were wrong. Vance had read the old reports, the ones that were classified so high that only a handful of people in all of human space were allowed to see them. She knew what had really happened to the Tethyrans. She knew where they had gone, and she knew that compared to what humanity could do now, 2 centuries later, the Tethyran operation had been gentle. "You wanted our help," she said quietly, speaking to no one and everyone. "You are going to get it. And when this is over, you are going to wish you had found another way." She turned away from the viewport and began issuing orders. Across human space, the greatest military force the galaxy had never seen began to wake up. The humans were coming, and the Velkhari's time was running out. The Kepler corridor had never been so empty. For thousands of years, it had been one of the busiest routes in the galaxy. Merchant ships, passenger liners, military patrols, and exploration vessels had filled it day and night. It was the main highway between the inner systems and the outer reaches, and there was always someone traveling through. Now there was no one. The evacuation had taken 12 days. Millions of ships had been moved. Hundreds of stations had been shut down. Entire populations had been relocated to temporary shelters in neighboring systems. It was the largest peacetime evacuation in galactic history, and it had been done in less than 2 weeks. No one complained. No one asked questions. The word had spread. The humans were coming. Get out of the way, or be caught in whatever was about to happen. At the edge of the corridor, a small fleet of observation vessels waited. The Galactic Council had asked permission to watch the human transit. After a long silence, the humans had agreed, but with conditions. The observers could watch from a distance. They could not approach the human fleet. They could not attempt communication. And they could not, under any circumstances, use active sensors. Passive observation only. The human message had said. Anything else will be considered hostile, action, and responded to accordingly. No one wanted to find out what responded to accordingly meant. Ambassador Zethra stood on the bridge of the Aldrani observation vessel Truthseeker. It was one of the most advanced scientific ships in the galaxy, equipped with sensors that could detect a single atom from a light year away. But today, all those sensors were turned off. They were watching with nothing but their eyes and the most basic passive receivers. Beside her stood General Throck, his massive form barely fitting in the Aldrani-sized bridge. He had insisted on being here. If humanity was going to save them or doom them, he wanted to see it for himself. There were others, too. Delegate Morven floated in a containment field, his crystalline body catching the dim light. A Veth observer named Crix stood in the corner, its gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy. And a dozen other species had sent representatives, all crowded onto the small ship, all waiting to see the monsters of human space. "How long?" Throck asked. "The message said they would arrive at the corridor entrance at the 14th hour, Zethra replied. "That is in approximately 3 minutes. Throck grunted. "They had better not be late. Every moment they delay is another moment the Velkhari grow stronger." "Somehow," Zethra said quietly, "I do not think the humans are worried about the Velkhari's strength." The minutes passed in silence. Everyone watched the main view screen, which showed the empty stretch of space where the human fleet was supposed to appear. There was nothing there. Just darkness and distant stars. Then, exactly at the 14th hour, the humans arrived. There was no warning, no flash of light, no distortion in space. One moment the corridor was empty, and the next moment, it was not. Ships appeared as if they had always been there, as if reality had simply forgotten to show them until now. Zethra's breath caught in her throat. There were thousands of them. Her basic sensors counted 4,700 vessels, arranged in a formation so perfect it looked like a work of art. But it was not the number that made her blood run cold. It was the ships themselves. They did not look like warships. They did not look like anything she had ever seen. They were angular, covered in sharp edges and flat surfaces that seemed to drink in the light. They were completely black, not painted black but somehow darker than the space around them, as if they were holes cut in the fabric of the universe. There were no lights, no engine glow, no windows, no markings, just shapes in the darkness, hanging motionless in the void. "What are those?" Throck whispered. No one answered. No one knew. Morven's crystalline body was flickering wildly, a sign of extreme stress. "I cannot sense them," he said. "I can see them with my eyes, but my other senses tell me nothing is there. It is as if they do not exist." One of the Aldrani scientists was staring at his console, his face pale. "Our passive sensors are reading them as spatial anomalies," he said. "Not ships. Not matter. Just distortions. Like something is bending space in those locations." "That is impossible," Throck said. "Ships cannot bend space. Not like that." "Human ships can, apparently," Zithra replied. The fleet began to move. There was no acceleration, no visible thrust, no change in engine output because there were no visible engines. The ships simply began moving forward, sliding through space like ghosts. They moved in perfect unison. Thousands of vessels acting as one, maintaining their formation without a single ship drifting even a meter out of place. Zithra had commanded fleets before. She knew how hard it was to maintain formation, how much communication and coordination it required. What the humans were doing should have been impossible. No species could coordinate that many ships that precisely without constant communication. But there was no communication. The human ships were completely silent. They broadcast nothing. They received nothing. They simply moved, as if guided by a single will. "Follow them," Zithra ordered. The Truth Seeker's pilot hesitated. "Ambassador, they told us not to approach. Keep our distance. Stay at least 1,000 kilometers behind. But I will not sit here while they disappear into the corridor. We need to see what they are going to do." The Truth Seeker moved forward, and the other observation vessels followed. They kept their distance, staying far behind the human fleet, but they followed. They had to know. The fate of the galaxy might depend on what happened next. The journey through the corridor took 6 hours. 6 hours of watching the human fleet glide through space in perfect silence. 6 hours of trying and failing to understand what they were seeing. 6 hours of growing fear. Throck tried to count the different ship types. He identified what he thought were capital ships, larger than the others, bristling with shapes that might have been weapons. He saw smaller vessels that moved in tight clusters, perhaps fighters or escorts. He saw medium-sized ships that traveled in pairs, their purposes unknown, but the more he looked, the less he understood. The ships did not follow any design logic he recognized. They had no obvious bridges, no visible sensor arrays, no apparent weapon mounts. They were just shapes, dark, silent shapes that did not belong in any universe Throck knew. "They are beautiful," Morven said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. In a terrible way, the crystalline being continued. "They are beautiful in the way that a black hole is beautiful, in the way that death is beautiful, perfect and inevitable, and absolutely terrifying." No one disagreed. Halfway through the corridor, a communication came from the human fleet. It was the first transmission they had sent since arriving, and it made everyone's heart stop. "Observation vessels. You have been following us for 3 hours and 17 minutes. This is acceptable. Continue to maintain your current distance. When we engage the enemy, you will stay at least 10,000 kilometers from the combat zone. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. Our weapons do not discriminate." The message ended. No response was requested or expected. "Our weapons do not discriminate," Throck repeated slowly. "What does that mean?" "It means," Zithra said, "that whatever they are going to do, They cannot control it precisely. Or they do not want to control it precisely. Either way, we should do what they say. The fleet continued forward. After another 3 hours, they reached the other side of the corridor, where the Kepler transit point would take them to the Thesson system. That was where the Velkari forward armada was located. 1.4 million warships. Preparing for their next conquest. The human fleet stopped at the transit point. For a long moment, nothing happened. The ships just hung there, silent and dark, waiting for something. Then a new transmission came, this time broadcast on all frequencies, in every language known to the galaxy. This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Human Fleet. To the observation vessels. What you are about to witness is classified. You will not record it. You will not analyze it. You will not discuss it with anyone outside of the Galactic Council's senior leadership. If you violate these conditions, we will know. And there will be consequences. A pause. To the Velkari Dominion. You have committed crimes against sapient life that cannot be forgiven and will not be forgotten. You have consumed 17 civilizations. You have murdered trillions. You have spread across the galaxy like a plague, taking everything and giving nothing back. Another pause. We are here to cure that plague. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally. All Velkari forces will power down their weapons and engines. All Velkari vessels will open themselves to inspection. All Velkari commanders will submit to war crimes tribunals. These terms are not negotiable. Everyone. The message ended. On the Truth Seeker's bridge, everyone stared at each other in disbelief. Surrender? Throck's voice was strangled. They are offering the Velkari a chance to surrender? There are 1.4 million Velkari ships in that system. The humans have less than 5,000. Perhaps they are bluffing, suggested one of the observers. Perhaps this is a psychological tactic. Humans do not bluff, Zithra said quietly. I have studied their history. When humans say something, they mean it. If they are offering surrender terms, it is because they believe they can enforce them. Against 1.4 million ships? Zithra did not answer. She did not know what to say. The 60 seconds passed. There was no response from the Velkari. Of course there was no response. The Velkari did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They only consumed. When the time limit expired, Admiral Vance's voice came again. Very well. The human fleet began to move toward the transit point. One by one, the ships slipped through, vanishing from normal space as they crossed to the Thesson system. The observation vessels followed, staying far behind, maintaining the distance they had been ordered to keep. On the other side of the transit point, they emerged into a battlefield. The Thesson system was full of Velkari ships. They filled the view screen from edge to edge. A swarm of organic vessels that looked like insects. All chitin and claws, and biological weapons. They moved in patterns that no individual mind could coordinate, guided by the hive consciousness that made the Velkari so dangerous. The human fleet emerged from the transit point and immediately spread out. Their ships taking positions that seemed random but probably were not. They were still outnumbered, nearly 300 to 1. From any logical perspective, they should have been doomed, but they showed no fear. They broadcast no distress calls. They simply took their positions and waited. A transmission came from the Velkari fleet. It was in their language, a chittering screech that the universal translators rendered into words. Tiny creatures. You come to challenge the Dominion? You come to stand against the swarm? We will consume you. We will strip the flesh from your bones and add your biomass to our own. Your worlds will be next. Your species will join the others we have taken. You are nothing. You are prey. Admiral Vance's response was calm. Almost. Bored. 57 seconds. The Velkari hive commander did not understand. 57 seconds until what? Until you had the chance to live. The Velkari fleet began to move. a wave of organic death sweeping toward the tiny human formation. Millions of weapons powered up, millions of drives engaged. The swarm was coming, and nothing in the galaxy had ever stopped the swarm before. On the Truth Seeker, Ambassador Zethra gripped the arms of her chair so hard her fingers ached. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. Either the humans would reveal some secret weapon, some incredible power that could stop the Valkyrie, or they would die. And the galaxy would die with them. What are they waiting for? Throck demanded. Why are they not firing? One. Why are they not firing? One. I do not know, Zethra whispered. I do not know. The Valkyrie fleet closed in. 100,000 kilometers. 50,000. 10,000. They were almost in weapons range. In moments, the shooting would begin, and the human fleet would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. And then the human ships pulsed. Zethra did not know how else to describe it. They pulsed. A wave of something that was not light, and was not energy, passed through space, expanding outward from the human fleet, in all directions. It moved faster than anything Zethra had ever seen. Faster than light. Faster than thought. It reached the Valkyrie fleet, and the Valkyrie fleet was gone. Not destroyed. Not scattered. Gone. One moment, there were 1.4 million ships filling the view screen. The next moment, there was nothing. Just empty space, silent and dark, with no trace that anyone had ever been there. The entire engagement had lasted 4 seconds. On the Truth Seeker's bridge, no one moved. No one spoke. No one breathed. Delegate Morven's crystalline body cracked. Literally cracked. Stress fractures spreading across his surface as his mind tried and failed to process what he had just witnessed. A Veth observer collapsed into a puddle, its form losing cohesion from shock. One of the Aldrani scientists simply fainted. General Throck stood frozen, his warrior's mind unable to accept what his eyes had seen. 1.4 million ships. The largest fleet the Valkyrie had ever assembled. Gone in 4 seconds. What? His voice was barely a whisper. What did they do? Zethra stared at the empty space where a fleet had been. Her hands were shaking. Her hearts were pounding. She had lived for 12,000 years. She had seen wonders and horrors beyond counting, but she had never seen anything like this. I do not know, she said. And I do not think I want to know. On the human flagship, Admiral Vance checked her tactical display. The Thesson system was clear. The Valkyrie forward armada was gone. The engagement had proceeded exactly as planned. She felt no satisfaction. There was no glory in this. No honor. Just efficiency. Casualties? She asked. None, Admiral. Her aide reported. All vessels report optimal status. Vance nodded. She had expected nothing less. She looked at the display, at the locations of the remaining Valkyrie forces scattered across the galaxy. There were still millions of ships, thousands of occupied systems, billions of Valkyrie soldiers, and workers and queens. Set course for the next target, she ordered. We have work to do. The fleet began to move, vanishing from the Thesson system as silently as they had arrived. They left nothing behind. No debris. No bodies. No evidence that the largest space battle in galactic history had just taken place. Only the observation vessels remained, floating in the empty space, trying to understand what they had witnessed, and failing. The silence lasted for a very long time. On the bridge of the Truth Seeker, the observation crew sat in shock, staring at empty space. Where 1.4 million Valkyrie warships had been moments ago, there was nothing. Not wreckage, not bodies, not even the faint energy signature of destroyed reactors. Just empty space. As if the fleet had never existed at all. Ambassador Zethra was the first to move. She turned to her science officer, an Aldrani named Threll, who had spent 3 centuries studying the physics of space combat. His face was pale, and his 4 eyes were wide with something that looked like madness. "Threll," she said softly. "What happened?" Threll did not respond. He just stared at his console, at the readings that made no sense, at the data that contradicted everything he knew about the universe. "Threll." He looked up at her, and she saw tears streaming down his silver face. "I do not know," he whispered. "I have no idea. The readings. There are no readings. One moment the Velkhari were there, the next moment they were not. There was no energy discharge, no weapon signature, no transition period. They were simply removed." "Removed," General Throck repeated. The massive warrior was gripping a support beam so hard the metal was bending. "What does that mean?" "I know," Threll said. "But that is what happened. As far as my instruments can tell, the Velkhari fleet did not die. It just stopped existing. It was edited out of reality." No one knew how to respond to that. A transmission came from the human fleet, and everyone flinched. Admiral Vance's voice filled the bridge, calm and businesslike. "Observation vessels. The first engagement is complete. You may approach the combat zone and conduct whatever analysis you wish. Be advised that you will find nothing. The Velkhari vessels and their crews have been removed from local spacetime. They are not dead. They are simply no longer present in this dimensional framework. Do not attempt to understand the mechanism. Your physics is not advanced enough." The transmission ended. "Not advanced enough," Morven said weakly. The crystalline delegate's body was still cracked from the shock, fracture lines running across his surface like scars. "They just erased 1.4 million ships from existence, and they tell us our physics is not advanced enough to understand how." Zithra said nothing. She was thinking about the message, about the specific words Vance had used. The Velkhari were not dead. They had been removed from local spacetime. They were no longer present in this dimensional framework. What did that mean? Where had they gone? Were they still alive somewhere, trapped in some other dimension, some other reality? Or had they simply ceased to be, their existence cancelled out as easily as erasing a word from a document? She did not know. And she suspected she never would. The truth seeker moved forward, approaching the space where the battle had occurred. Other observation vessels followed, their crews desperate to find some clue, some evidence, some explanation for what they had witnessed. They found nothing. The space was empty. Not just empty of ships, but empty of everything. The background radiation was normal. The gravitational fields were stable. There was no trace of the massive fleet that had filled this region moments ago. It was as if the Velkhari had never been there, at all. "This is impossible," one of the scientists muttered. 1.4 million ships. Billions of Velkhari. They cannot just vanish without leaving anything behind. Even complete annihilation leaves residue. Debris. Energy signatures. Something. "Human weapons do not leave residue," Threll said quietly. General Throck turned away from the view screen. He could not look at that empty space any longer. It made him feel small in a way he had never felt before. He was a warrior. He had fought in 100 battles. He had faced enemies that should have terrified him and had not flinched. But this was different. This was not warfare. This was something else entirely. Something that made all of his experience, all of his training, all of his courage, completely meaningless. "What do we do now?" he asked. Zithra looked at him. "We watch," she said. "We observe. We try to learn what we can. And we pray that we never give the humans a reason to use those weapons on us." Far across the galaxy, on a world that orbited a dying red star, the Velkhari Hive Queen felt her children die. She was ancient, older than most stars, a creature of pure biological perfection who had guided her species across the cosmos for millions of years. She had consumed civilizations beyond counting. She had absorbed the knowledge and memories of trillions of sapient beings. She was the most powerful entity in the galaxy, the apex predator of a universe full of prey. And now, for the first time in her existence, she was afraid. The connection had been severed instantly. One moment she had felt her children in the Thessan system. 1.4 million ships, full of drones and warriors and commanders, all linked to her mind, all extensions of her will. The next moment, they were gone. Not dead. Gone. The link had not been broken by death. It had been cut, cleanly and completely, as if those minds had never existed. She reached out with her consciousness, trying to find them. She searched every corner of her vast mental network, every hidden recess of the hive mind. Nothing. They were not sleeping. They were not damaged. They were not there. What happened? She screamed into the void, her voice echoing through the minds of every Valkyrie in the galaxy. Her advisors, the sub-queens and prime commanders who served directly beneath her, responded with confusion and fear. They had felt it too. They had felt the sudden absence, the emptiness where 1.4 million of their siblings had been. We do not know, Great Mother. The fleet was engaging unknown vessels, small ships, fewer than 5,000. They should have been consumed easily. And then, nothing. Find out, the Hive Queen commanded. Send scouts, send observers. I must know what did this. But even as she gave the order, she already knew. Deep in her ancient mind, in memories that stretched back to the dawn of her species, she remembered something, a warning, passed down through generations of queens, a legend about creatures from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. Creatures who should have been weak, but were not. Creatures who had been quarantined, hidden away, sealed behind barriers that even the Valkyrie could not cross. The humans, she had ignored them. When her scouts had reported the quarantine zone, she had simply ordered her fleets to go around it. There were plenty of other targets, plenty of other civilizations to consume. Why bother with the one species that the rest of the galaxy was afraid of? Now she understood why. Recall all forces, she ordered. Every fleet, every garrison, every ship, bring them home. We must defend the throne world. Her children obeyed, as they always did. Across the galaxy, Valkyrie forces began to disengage from their campaigns. Occupation fleets lifted off from conquered worlds. Construction hives ceased their work. Everything the Valkyrie had was being pulled back, gathered around the throne world for a final defense. But even as she organized her forces, the Hive Queen felt more of her children disappear. One by one, sometimes hundreds at a time, the connections were being cut. They were not regrouping. They were hunting, and her children could not escape. The human fleet had split into smaller groups, each group moving independently through Valkyrie territory. They did not follow predictable paths. They did not target strategic locations. They simply appeared wherever Valkyrie ships were, and made them disappear. Admiral Vance commanded from the Prometheus, the flagship of the United Human Fleet. It was the largest of the human vessels, though still small by galactic standards. Inside, thousands of crew members worked in perfect coordination, managing systems that the rest of the galaxy could not even imagine. Vance stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as another Valkyrie position was eliminated. Her face showed no emotion. There was no satisfaction in this work, no glory, just necessity. Admiral, said Commander Chen, her second in command. The Valkyrie are recalling their forces. They are pulling back to their throne world. As expected, Vance replied. They think they can make a stand. They think numbers will protect them. Will it? Vance almost smiled. Almost. No. 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 She studied the display, watching the icons that represented Valkyrie forces streaming back toward their home system. Millions of ships, all rushing to gather around their queen. From the Valkyrie perspective, it probably seemed like a good strategy. Concentrate forces. Create an impenetrable defense. Force the humans to fight a battle they cannot win. They did not understand. The humans were not going to fight a battle. They were going to do what they had been doing since the war began. They were going to make the Valkyrie stop existing, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. Continue the operation, Vance ordered. Eliminate all Valkyrie forces in transit. Don't let them reach the throne world. Some will escape, Chen pointed out. We cannot be everywhere at once. We can be enough places at once, Vance replied. And for those who do escape, let them gather. Let them build their final defense. When we come for the throne world, I want every last Valkyrie in one place. Chen nodded and returned to her duties. She had served under Admiral Vance for 20 years. She knew better than to question her decisions. The Admiral had never been wrong. Not once. Not ever. Across the galaxy, the hunt continued. A Valkyrie convoy carrying reinforcements to the front lines vanished in the Kethros system. A garrison of 50,000 ships, guarding a recently conquered world, disappeared in an instant. A construction fleet building new warships was erased before a single weapon could be completed. The Valkyrie had never known fear before. They had been the predators, the consumers, the inevitable end of all things. Now, they were the prey, and they did not know how to cope with it. Some tried to fight. They turned their fleets toward the human vessels, charging with every weapon blazing. It made no difference. The humans pulsed, and the attackers were gone. Some tried to run. They plotted courses to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, to regions so remote that they thought no one could follow. The humans were there waiting for them. Some tried to hide. They shut down their systems, powered down their drives, drifted in the void like dead rocks. The humans found them anyway. There was no escape. There was no resistance. There was only the endless, patient elimination of everything the Valkyrie had ever been. On the observation vessel Truthseeker, Ambassador Zethra watched the reports come in. Each one was the same. Human fleet appears. Valkyrie forces vanish. Human fleet moves on. No debris. No survivors. No explanation. It is genocide, General Throck said heavily. The warrior had lost his taste for violence. What the humans were doing went beyond anything he had ever imagined. They are exterminating an entire species. The Valkyrie exterminated 17 species, Morven pointed out. The crystalline delegate had sealed his cracks with emergency repair compound, but the scars remained. Is this not justice? Is it? Throck asked. The Valkyrie killed those species in battle. They consumed them, yes, but there were fights. There were struggles. There were last stands and desperate defenses. This is not a fight. This is pest control. Zethra said nothing. She was thinking about what Admiral Vance had said. The Valkyrie were not dead. They had been removed from local space-time. What did that mean? Were they suffering somewhere? Were they aware of what had happened to them? Or had they simply ceased? Their consciousness snuffed out like a candle flame. She did not know, and she was not sure she wanted to. A new transmission came from the human fleet. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, meant for everyone in the galaxy to hear. This is Admiral Helena Vance. To all species affected by the Valkyrie invasion, the threat is being neutralized. All Valkyrie forces in your territories will be removed within the next 48 hours. You may begin recovery and reconstruction operations immediately. Do not attempt to interfere with our operations. Do not attempt to communicate with our vessels. We will notify you when the operation is complete. That was it. No diplomacy, no reassurance, no explanation. Just a statement of fact and an order to stay out of the way. They are going to do it, Zethra said softly. They are actually going to do it. They are going to destroy the entire Valkyrie dominion. In 48 hours, Throck added. They are going to eliminate an empire that has existed for millions of years in 48 hours. No, Morven corrected. They are going to eliminate an empire that conquered a third of the galaxy in 48 hours. The existence before that does not matter. Only the threat matters. They sat in silence, watching the reports continue to come in. System after system was cleared. Fleet after fleet vanished. The map of Valkyrie territory, which had been so terrifyingly red just days ago, was shrinking before their eyes. The humans were not fighting a war. They were performing an extinction. And they were doing it with the same calm efficiency that others might use to clean a house or organize a database. Zethra thought about the Tethyrans. 200 years ago, humanity had done something similar to them. The galaxy had been horrified. They had quarantined the humans, locked them away, tried to forget they existed. Now the humans were back. And they were proving that the galaxy's fears had been entirely justified. But also, perhaps, that their decision to call for help had been the right one. She did not know how to feel about that. She was grateful to be alive. She was grateful that the Valkyrie would not consume her people. But she was also terrified of the species that was saving her, terrified of what they could do, terrified of what they might do someday if they decided the rest of the galaxy was also a threat. For now, she could only watch and wait. Watch as the humans erased the Valkyrie from existence. Wait to see what would happen when the war was over, and hope that humanity would keep its promise to go home when the job was done. On the Valkyrie throne world, the Hive Queen felt her empire dying. Connection after connection was severed. Mind after mind went silent. The great network that had linked billions of her children was being torn apart, piece by piece. She gathered her remaining forces around her. 800,000 ships. The last remnants of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. They formed a shell around her world, layer upon layer of biological death, the most powerful defensive formation the Valkyrie had ever created. She reached out to her children, to the millions of minds that remained, and she spoke. They will come for us. They will try to end us. But we will not fall easily. We will fight. We will resist. And even if we die, we will make them remember us. Her children responded with determination, with loyalty, with the endless hunger that had defined their species since the beginning. They would fight. They would not surrender. They would show these humans that the Valkyrie did not kneel. But deep in her ancient mind, beneath the defiance and the rage, the Hive Queen felt something she had never felt before. She felt certain that she was going to lose. The liberation of Kethros IV should have been a moment of celebration. For 3 years, the Kethrani people had lived under Valkyrie occupation. Their cities had been destroyed. Their population had been harvested for biomass. Their culture, their history, their very identity had been slowly erased as the Valkyrie consumed everything they had built. Now the Valkyrie were gone. The garrison that had held their world, nearly 100,000 organic warships, had simply vanished. The occupation was over. The Kethrani were free, but there was no celebration in the streets of their ruined capital. Instead, the survivors gathered in the open squares and stared at the sky, at the space where the Valkyrie fleet had been. They did not cheer. They did not sing. They did not dance. They were too afraid. Prime Minister Kethrel stood on the balcony of what had once been the government palace. Half the building was gone, dissolved by Valkyrie acid weapons during the initial invasion. The other half was scarred and broken, barely standing. But it was still a symbol of Kethrani authority, and Kethrel needed symbols now more than ever. "What do we do?" asked his aide, a young female named Thena. Kethrel watched the sky. The human ships were still visible, dark shapes moving in perfect formation, heading toward the transit point that would take them to their next target. They had not landed. They had not communicated. They had simply appeared, erased the occupation force, and continued on their way. "Tell them to be grateful," he said finally. "Tell them we have been saved. Tell them to rebuild, to recover, to live again." "And the humans?" Kethrel was silent for a long moment. "Tell them to pray," he said. "Pray that the humans never have reason to come back. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. World after world was liberated. Species after species was freed from Valkyrie control. And everywhere, the reaction was the same. Relief mixed with terror, gratitude poisoned by fear. The humans did not stop to accept thanks. They did not pause to receive honors. They did not stay long enough to be worshipped, or praised, or questioned. They simply moved on, relentless and silent, continuing their hunt. Ambassador Zethra had stopped counting the eliminated Valkyrie forces. The numbers were too large, too overwhelming. Millions of ships, billions of Valkyrie, all of them gone, erased from existence as if they had never been born. She had tried to contact Admiral Vance several times. She had questions. So many questions. How did the human weapons work? What happened to the Valkyrie when they were removed? Did the humans plan to stay after the war was over? Would they return to their quarantine zone? Vance had not responded to any of her messages. The only communication from the human fleet was the occasional status update, broadcast to the entire galaxy, announcing which Valkyrie positions had been eliminated and which sectors were now safe for civilian traffic. "They do not care about us," General Throck said one evening. The warrior had lost weight during the campaign. He was not eating well, not sleeping well. The scale of what he was witnessing had broken something inside him. "We called them here. We begged for their help. And they do not even look at us. Would you look at an insect that asked you to step on another insect?" Morven asked. The crystalline delegate had recovered somewhat from his initial shock, though the cracks in his body remained. "That is what we are to them. Insects. Interesting, perhaps. Worthy of protection, perhaps. But not equals. Not partners. Just small things that needed help. We are not insects," Throck growled. "No. But compared to the humans, what are we? They have weapons that can erase matter from existence. They have ships that move faster than light, without using hyperspace. They have technology that our best scientists cannot even begin to understand. We are not their equals. We may never be their equals." Zethra listened to the argument, but did not participate. She was thinking about something else, something she had noticed in the human transmissions. In the way Admiral Vance spoke, in the patterns of the human operation, the humans were not enjoying this. She had expected arrogance. She had expected pride, triumph, satisfaction. The humans were winning the greatest military campaign in galactic history. They were saving countless species from extinction. They were proving themselves to be the most powerful force in the known universe. But there was no joy in their communications, no boasting, no celebration, just cold, professional efficiency, status reports, and threat assessments, and tactical updates. Nothing more. It was as if the humans saw this not as a victory but as a chore, an unpleasant task that had to be completed before they could go home and do whatever they actually wanted to do. That, more than anything else, frightened Zethra. On the Prometheus, Admiral Vance reviewed the latest casualty reports. They could not even see them coming before they were gone. But that was not the casualty report Vance was concerned with. "How many liberated worlds today?" she asked. 14, Commander Chen replied. "Estimated civilian populations freed from Valkyrie control. Approximately 12 billion. And how many of those civilians were in immediate danger?" Chen checked her data. "Approximately 8 billion. The Valkyrie were in the process of harvesting them for biomass when we intervened." Vance nodded slowly. 8 billion lives saved in a single day. 8 billion people who would have been dead by tomorrow if the human fleet had not arrived when it did. This was why they were here. Not for glory, not for conquest, not for revenge. For this. For the chance to save lives that would otherwise be lost. She had been a soldier for 40 years. She had fought in battles that no one outside human space would ever know about. She had done terrible things in the name of peace and security, but she had never forgotten why she had joined the military in the first place. To protect people who could not protect themselves. The galaxy had asked for help. The galaxy was getting help. And when the job was done, the humans would go home and hope they never had to do this again. Admiral, Chen said, interrupting her thoughts. We have a communication from Earth. Priority 1. Vance frowned. Priority 1 meant the governing council. They did not contact her unless something was wrong. Put it through. The face of Chancellor Morrison appeared on her screen. He was an old man, older than Vance, with a face that showed every year of worry and responsibility. He led the civilian government of human space, and he had been against this operation from the beginning. Admiral Vance, I have concerns. You always have concerns, Chancellor. This time they are significant. Morrison leaned forward, his expression serious. The galactic community is frightened. Our allies are frightened. The species we have liberated are frightened. Everyone is watching what we are doing, and they are terrified. They should be grateful. They are grateful. But they are also wondering what happens when the Valkyrie are gone. They are wondering if they will be next. Vance felt a flash of anger, but she controlled it. This was an old argument. She and Morrison had been having it for decades. We are not conquerors. We have never been conquerors. We do not want their worlds or their resources or their submission. We just want to be left alone. I know that. You know that. But they do not know that. All they know is that we can erase entire fleets from existence, and they cannot stop us. They are afraid. Admiral, and fear makes people do foolish things. What do you want me to do? Morrison sighed. I want you to be careful. When you reach the Valkyrie throne world, I want you to offer them surrender terms. Real surrender terms. Not the kind you offered before. Give them a chance to survive. Vance stared at him. You want me to spare the Valkyrie? I want you to show the galaxy that we are capable of mercy. That we can be reasoned with. That we are not monsters who destroy everything that threatens us. The Valkyrie cannot be reasoned with. They are a hive mind. They do not understand surrender. They do not understand mercy. They only understand consumption. Ick. Then you will have done your duty by offering. But the offer must be made. The galaxy must see that we tried. Vance was silent for a long moment. She thought about the 17 species the Valkyrie had consumed. She thought about the billions of lives she had saved, and the billions more that she would save. She thought about the fear in the eyes of the liberated civilians, the way they looked at the sky when human ships passed overhead. Fine, she said finally. I will offer surrender terms. But when they refuse, and they will refuse, I will do what must be done. That is all I ask, Morrison said. Good luck, Admiral. The transmission ended. Vance stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned back to the tactical display. The hunt was almost over. The Valkyrie had pulled their remaining forces back to their throne world. 800,000 ships, gathered in a defensive shell around the planet where their queen lived. It was the largest concentration of enemy forces in the campaign, and it would be the last. Set course for the Valkyrie throne world, Vance ordered. All vessels. Maximum speed. Yes, Admiral. The human fleet began to move. Across the galaxy, thousands of ships changed course, converging on a single destination. They left behind the liberated worlds. The empty spaces where Valkyrie armadas had been. The grateful populations who would never forget what they had witnessed. They left behind fear and awe and gratitude and terror. They left behind a galaxy that would never look at the stars the same way again. And they moved toward the end. The journey to the throne world took 3 days. 3 days of silent travel, of final preparations, of anticipation. On every human ship, crews checked and rechecked their systems. Officers reviewed battle plans that they had memorized years ago. Soldiers sat in their quarters and thought about home, about family, about the lives they would return to when this was over. Admiral Vance spent those 3 days in her quarters, reviewing intelligence reports and writing letters. She wrote to her sister, who lived on a farm in the outer colonies. She wrote to her former husband, who had divorced her 20 years ago because she was never home. She wrote to the children of officers who had died under her command, keeping promises she had made to their parents. She did not expect to die. The odds of human casualties were essentially zero, but she had learned long ago that war was unpredictable, and it was better to be prepared for the worst. On the second day of the journey, she received another message from the Galactic Council. This one was from Ambassador Zythra. Admiral Vance, I know you are busy. I know you have more important things to worry about than the concerns of a single ambassador. But I must ask you something, and I hope you will answer. Vance listened. When this is over, what happens? Will you return to your quarantine zone? Will you isolate yourselves again? Or will you remain a part of the galactic community? There was a pause. I ask because I am afraid. Not of you, not exactly, but of the uncertainty. For 200 years, we have lived with the fear of what humanity might become. Now we have seen what you are capable of, and I do not know if that makes me feel safer or more terrified. Another pause. Please, Admiral, give us something. A word, a promise, a plan, anything that will help us understand what comes next. Vance listened to the message 3 times. Then she sat down and composed a reply. Ambassador Zythra, I understand your concerns. I wish I could ease them. But I am a soldier, not a diplomat. I do not make policy. I do not decide what humanity will do when this war is over. All I can tell you is this. We did not want this war. We did not seek it. We came because you asked for help, and because the Velkhari were a threat that had to be stopped. When the threat is gone, we will return to our space. We will close our borders. We will leave you alone. That is what we have always wanted. To be left alone. She paused, considering her next words carefully. I know you are afraid. I would be afraid too, in your position. But fear is not a reason to make enemies. When this is over, I hope you will remember that we came to help. We came to save lives. We came because it was the right thing to do. And when we leave, I hope you will remember that we kept our promise. She sent the message and returned to her preparations. On the 3rd day, the human fleet arrived at the Velkhari throne world. It was a dark planet, orbiting a dying red star. The surface was covered in organic structures, vast hives that stretched across continents, linked by networks of biological tubes and tunnels. From orbit, it looked like a living thing, a single organism the size of a planet, and surrounding it, filling the space between the planet and its 3 moons, was the final Velkhari armada, 800,000 ships, arranged in layer upon layer of defensive formations. They bristled with biological weapons. They pulsed with the energy of a hive mind, desperate to survive. Admiral Vance looked at the tactical display and felt nothing. No fear, no excitement, no satisfaction. Just the calm certainty that this was the end, and that the end would come quickly. All vessels, she said. Take your positions. The human fleet spread out, surrounding the Velkhari defensive sphere. 4,700 ships against 800,000. The odds looked impossible, but everyone on both sides knew that the odds were meaningless. Open a channel to the Velkhari Queen, Vance ordered. All frequencies. All languages. The channel opened. Vance spoke. This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Human Fleet. To the Velkhari Hive. Queen, your empire is destroyed. Your forces are gone. You are surrounded. I am authorized to offer you surrender terms. She paused. Power down your weapons and engines. Open your vessels for inspection. Submit to war crimes tribunals for your commanders. Accept permanent restrictions on your expansion and military capabilities. In exchange, your species will be allowed to survive. Your people will live. Your queen will remain in power, though limited in her authority. She paused again. These terms are generous, more generous than you deserve. I advise you to accept them. Minger Season 2. I would onringed. The response came immediately. The Hive Queen's voice filled the bridge, a chittering screech that the translators rendered into words. You offer us surrender? You dare? We are the Velkhari. We have consumed civilizations older than your species has existed. We do not kneel. We do not submit. We do not beg. There was rage in that voice, but also fear. Vance could hear it, hiding beneath the defiance. We will fight. We will resist. And even if we die, we will make you remember us. The channel closed. Vance nodded slowly. She had expected nothing else. The Velkhari were not capable of surrender. Their nature did not allow it. They could only consume, or be consumed. She had made the offer, as Chancellor Morrison had requested. She had done her duty. Now she would do what must be done. All vessels, she said, begin final approach. Prepare for engagement. The human fleet began to move, converging on the Velkhari defensive sphere. 4,000. 700 ships against 800,000. The final battle of the greatest war in galactic history. Except it would not be a battle. It would be an ending. The Velkhari throne world hung in space like a wound in the darkness. Its surface pulsed with the light of 1 billion biological fires. The accumulated life force of a species that had consumed its way across the galaxy for millions of years. Around it, 800,000 warships waited, their organic hulls bristling with weapons that could tear apart planets. At the center of the defensive formation, buried deep within the largest vessel in the fleet, the Hive Queen prepared for the end. She was vast, larger than some starships, a creature of pure biological perfection that had evolved over millions of years to be the ultimate predator. Her body was a network of neural connections, linking her to every Velkhari in existence. Through her eyes, she saw through 1 billion eyes. Through her mind, she thought with 1 billion minds. But now that network was nearly empty. Where once there had been countless connections, now there were only the 800,000 ships around her. Where once she had commanded an empire that spanned 1/3 of the galaxy, now she commanded only this last desperate defense. The humans had taken everything else. She watched them approach on her tactical displays, their black ships moving in perfect formation. They did not hurry. They did not hesitate. They simply advanced, patient and inevitable, like death itself coming to claim what was owed. My children. She spoke into the hive mind, her voice reaching every Velkhari who remained. This is the end. The enemy that destroyed our empire has come to finish what they started. They offer us surrender, but we know what surrender means. It means chains. It means cages. It means the slow death of everything we are. She felt her children respond, their minds touching hers, their determination flowing through the network. They were afraid. They were all afraid. But they would not run. They would not hide. They would face the humans, and they would fight. We are the Velkhari, the Queen continued. We have existed since before these creatures crawled out of their primordial oceans. We have consumed civilizations that made the galaxy tremble. We are the greatest predators the universe has ever known. She paused, gathering her will. Today, we may die. But we will not die like prey. We will die like predators. We will show these humans that the Velkhari were worthy enemies. We will make them bleed for every ship they take. And when the historians of the galaxy write about this day, they will write that the Velkhari did not kneel. The Velkhari did not beg. The Velkhari fought until the very end. The response came back from 100,000 minds, a roar of defiance that echoed through the hive network. They were ready. They were all ready. The Queen turned her attention to the human fleet. They were close now, almost within weapons range. She could see their ships clearly on her displays, those strange black vessels that bent light around themselves like holes in space. A transmission came through. The human admiral's voice filled the bridge of the Queen's flagship. Valkyrie Hive Queen. This is your final warning. Power down your weapons and surrender. This is your last chance. The Queen laughed. It was a terrible sound. A chittering screech that echoed through the hive mind and made her children flinch. You offer us mercy, human. You, who have destroyed our empire. You, who have erased our children from existence. You speak of surrender as if it were a gift. But we know what you are. We know what you have done. And we know that there is no mercy in you. Only death. She paused. So come, human. Come and finish what you started. But know this. We will not make it easy. You will remember this day. You will remember the Valkyrie. Admiral Vance listened to the Queen's response and felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Something closer to sadness. The Valkyrie were monsters. They had killed trillions. They had consumed entire civilizations without mercy or hesitation. They deserved everything that was about to happen to them, but they were also alive. They were thinking, feeling beings with their own hopes and fears and dreams. Even if those dreams were nightmares for everyone else, they were still dreams, and in a few moments, they would be gone forever. Admiral, Commander Chen said softly. The fleet is in position. We are ready to engage on your command. Vance nodded. She looked at the tactical display one more time, at the 800,000 ships that surrounded the throne world, the last remnants of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. One moment, she said. She activated the communication channel again. The Queen's image appeared on her screen, a massive creature of chitin and claws, with eyes that burned with ancient hatred. You wanted to know why we are doing this, Vance said. You wanted to understand what drives us. So I will tell you. The Queen did not respond, but she was listening. Vance could see it in her eyes. You killed 17 civilizations. Trillions of lives. You did not stop to learn their names. You did not care about their histories, or their cultures, or their dreams. You just consumed. You took, and took, and took. And you never once asked yourself if what you were doing was wrong. She paused. We could have done this differently. We could have negotiated. We could have contained you. We could have watched you for centuries while your empire slowly crumbled from its own contradictions. We have the patience for it. We have the time. Another pause. But you would have kept killing. Every day that we waited would have been another day of deaths. Another day of consumed worlds. Another day of species going extinct because we were too cautious to act. She looked into the Queen's eyes, and the Queen looked back. We are not conquerors. We do not want your worlds or your resources or your submission. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in peace, in our own space, with our own people, and we want everyone else to have that same chance. She leaned forward. You took that chance from 17 civilizations. You would have taken it from 100 more if we had not stopped you. So yes, we are going to destroy you. Not because we hate you, not because we enjoy it, but because the galaxy will be safer when you are gone. The Queen stared at her for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was quieter than before. You think you are righteous. You think you are justified. But you are no different from us. You consume what threatens you. You destroy what you cannot control. You are predators, just like we are. Vance nodded slowly. Maybe. Maybe we are predators. But we do not hunt the innocent. We do not consume the helpless. We only hunt the monsters. She straightened in her chair. Goodbye, Hive Queen. I hope you find peace, wherever you are going. She cut the transmission and turned to Commander Chen. Begin the operation. The human fleet pulsed. It was exactly like before, in the Thesson system and every engagement since. A wave of something that was not light and was not energy expanded outward from the human ships. It moved faster than anything natural, faster than the speed of light, faster than thought itself. It reached the Valkyrie defensive sphere, and the sphere was gone. 800,000 ships, billions of Valkyrie, the last remnants of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. All of them, removed from existence in a single instant. The entire engagement lasted 3 seconds. On the throne world below, the biological structures that covered the surface went dark. The neural networks that linked them fell silent. The great hives that had nurtured the Valkyrie species for millions of years became empty shells. Their inhabitants gone as if they had never existed. The hive queen was gone. Her children were gone. The Valkyrie dominion was gone, and the galaxy was silent. In the observation fleet, far from the combat zone, Ambassador Zethra watched the tactical display go blank. One moment it had been covered in the icons of Valkyrie ships. The next moment there was nothing but empty space. She had seen this before. She had seen it a dozen times since the campaign began. But somehow, this time was different. This time was the end. "It is done," General Throck said heavily. The warrior's voice was barely a whisper. "The Valkyrie are gone." None, gone," Morven repeated. The crystalline delegate's body was dim, his light fading with exhaustion and shock. Millions of years of evolution, billions of individual minds, an empire that conquered a third of the galaxy. Gone in 3 seconds. "They deserved it," said one of the other observers, a Kathrani delegate whose world had been liberated just days ago. "They killed my people. They killed trillions. They deserved everything they got." "Did they?" Zethra asked softly. "Did every single Valkyrie deserve to die? Were there no innocents among them? No children? No individuals who might have chosen differently if they had the chance?" No one answered. No one knew. A transmission came from the human fleet. Admiral Vance's voice filled the bridge, calm and professional as always. "This is Admiral Helena Vance. The Valkyrie Dominion has been neutralized. All Valkyrie forces have been removed. The threat to galactic civilization has been eliminated." There was a pause. "The United Human Fleet will remain in this system for 48 hours to ensure the operation is complete. After that, we will return to human space. We ask that all non-human vessels maintain a respectful distance during this period." Another pause. "The Galactic Council may contact us through normal diplomatic channels if necessary. We recommend establishing a memorial for the species consumed by the Valkyrie. They should be remembered." That was it. No celebration. No boasting. No claims of glory or triumph. Just a status report and a recommendation for a memorial. Zethra stared at the blank tactical display for a long time. Then she activated her own communication channel and composed a message to the human fleet. "Admiral Vance, on behalf of the Galactic Council and all the species you have saved, I thank you. I know that words are inadequate for what you have done. But please know that your actions today will never be forgotten. The galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "I understand that you wish to return to your space. I understand that you want to be left alone. We will respect that wish, but I hope that someday, when the fear has faded and the memories have healed, we might find a way to know each other as neighbors rather than strangers." She sent the message and waited. The response came an hour later. It was not from Admiral Vance, but from a young woman whose face Zethra did not recognize. Her eyes were ancient, despite her youth, and her voice carried a weight that seemed far too heavy for her years. "Ambassador Zethra, Admiral Vance asked me to respond on her behalf. She is busy with post-operation procedures and cannot spare the time for diplomacy, but she wanted you to know that she appreciates your message and your thanks." The young woman paused. "You asked why we came. You asked what drives us, Admiral Vance told the Hive Queen. But I think you need to hear it too. She looked directly into the camera, and Zethra felt as if those ancient eyes were staring into her soul. 200 years ago, you quarantined us because you were afraid of what we might become. You gave us time. Time to think. Time to grow. Time to look at the universe and ask ourselves one question. If something truly threatened everything we love, how far would we be willing to go to stop it? She paused. The answer, Ambassador, is that there is no such thing as too far. There is only whatever it takes. Another pause. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want to be worshipped or feared or obeyed. We just want to live our lives, raise our children, and explore the universe in peace. And we want everyone else to have that same chance. She leaned forward slightly. The Velkari took that chance from 17 civilizations. They would have taken it from you and from everyone else if we had not stopped them. So we stopped them. Not because we enjoyed it. Not because we wanted power or glory or revenge, but because it was the right thing to do. She straightened. We are going home now. We are closing our borders. We hope you will respect our wishes and leave us alone. But know this. If another threat like the Velkari emerges, if another empire rises that threatens the innocent and the helpless, we will come again. We will do what must be done, and we will not apologize for it. She smiled, and it was a tired smile, full of sadness and wisdom and a deep, profound loneliness. Goodbye, Ambassador. I hope we never have to meet again, because if we do, it will mean that something has gone terribly wrong. The transmission ended. Zethra sat in silence for a long time, staring at the blank screen. Around her, the other observers were quiet, lost in their own thoughts. Finally, General Throck spoke. What do we do now? Zethra looked at the tactical display. At the empty space where the Velkari Empire had been. She thought about the 17 species that had been consumed. She thought about the billions of lives that had been saved. She thought about the humans, going home to their quarantine zone, closing their borders, waiting for the next time they were needed. We live, she said. We rebuild. We remember the dead and honor their memories. We create the future that the Velkari tried to take from us. She stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, she could see the human fleet. Those strange black ships that had changed the galaxy forever. They were beginning to move, forming up for the journey home. And we pray, she added quietly. We pray that we never give the humans a reason to come back. The human fleet departed the next day. They did not say goodbye. They did not accept thanks or honors or gifts. They simply formed up and vanished, jumping back to their quarantine zone in the blink of an eye. In the weeks and months that followed, the galaxy began to recover. The worlds that the Velkari had conquered were reclaimed. The species that had been occupied were freed. The economies that had been destroyed were rebuilt. A memorial was established, as Admiral Vance had suggested. It was built on Nexus Prime, in the center of the Galactic Council chambers. It listed the names of the 17 species that the Velkari had consumed, along with whatever information could be recovered about their cultures, their histories, their dreams. Below the list, there was an inscription. It had been composed by Ambassador Zethra, and it had been approved unanimously by the Council, in memory of those who were lost, in gratitude to those who saved us, and in hope for a future where such sacrifices are never needed again. Some nights, when the council chambers were empty and the lights were dim, Zethra would come to the memorial and stand before it. She would read the names of the dead species and wonder what they had been like. She would think about the humans and wonder what they were doing behind their closed borders. And she would look up at the stars and ask herself the same question that had haunted her since the war began. Had they done the right thing? They had called for help, and help had come. The Velkari were gone. The galaxy was saved. But at what cost? The humans had shown themselves to be something beyond comprehension. They had weapons that could erase matter from existence. They had ships that moved faster than light. They had the power to destroy entire civilizations in days. And now they were sitting in their quarantine zone, watching, waiting, ready to emerge again if they were needed. Was that safety? Or was it a different kind of threat? Zethra did not know. She suspected she would never know. But late at night, when she stood before the memorial and thought about everything that had happened, she always came back to the same conclusion. The humans had kept their promise. They had come when called. They had done what needed to be done. And they had gone home, without asking for anything in return. That had to count for something. The galaxy would never forget what the humans had done. They would never forget the fear, the awe, the terrible beauty of those black ships and their impossible weapons. They would never forget that somewhere, in a corner of the galaxy that no one was allowed to visit, there was a species that could end worlds with a thought. But they would also never forget that when the darkness came, when all hope seemed lost, when the galaxy faced extinction at the hands of an unstoppable enemy, the humans had answered the call. They had come. They had fought. They had won. And then they had gone home. That was the story that would be told for 1,000 generations. The story of the war that ended in moments. The story of the species that saved the galaxy and then simply walked away. The story of humanity. In human space, life returned to normal. Admiral Helena Vance retired from active duty and moved to a small house on the shores of a lake on her home colony. She spent her days reading, fishing, and watching the sun set over the water. Sometimes reporters would try to interview her. Sometimes historians would request access to her records. Sometimes politicians would try to convince her to return to duty. She refused them all. "The job is done," she would say. "Let someone else carry the burden now." She died peacefully, 23 years after the war, surrounded by family and friends. Her last words were spoken to her granddaughter, a young woman who had just been accepted into the military academy. "Remember why we fight," Vance whispered. "Not for glory. Not for power. Not for revenge. We fight to protect the people who cannot protect themselves. Never forget that." Rever, her granddaughter, promised to remember. And far away, in a galaxy that had learned to fear and respect the species from the small blue world, the stars continued to shine. Civilizations rose and fell. Empires came and went. Time flowed on, as it always did. But the legend of humanity lived on. And in the darkness between the stars, in the quiet corners of the universe where ancient things waited and watched, something had taken notice. Something had seen what the humans could do. Something had marked them as interesting. But that is a story for another time. For now, the galaxy was at peace, and humanity was home.